Snakes will eat almost anything they can swallow, but researchers in several parts of the world have started uncovering a very different pattern. A small creature that usually hides beneath rocks and looks like an ordinary centipede was seizing snakes, wrapping its entire body around them, and killing them with venom. At first, it seemed like an isolated incident in Thailand. Then similar attacks were documented on islands, in tropical forests, and even in cases where the snake had tried to eat its attacker first. In one of those cases, the snake actually swallowed it whole and still died. The attackers were giant centipedes, animals that hardly anyone took seriously until it became clear that the largest species had long since moved beyond hunting insects. They seemed to have skipped several levels of the food chain and gone straight after predators that were supposed to be eating them. As it turned out, snakes were almost uniquely ill-suited to face an opponent like this, and you're about to see why. The problem is that a centipede doesn't try to defeat a snake the way another predator would. It doesn't constrict it or tear it apart. It only needs to secure itself properly against the snake's body once. Almost all of a snake's weapons are concentrated at the front, its head, jaws, and fangs. But when an attacker grips it at several points at once, the snake's long body suddenly becomes a trap rather than an advantage. The snake can thrash, bite, and twist all at once, but the centipede moves with it and keeps injecting venom. That's why the first case in Thailand was so important. It showed that a snake could be stronger, longer, and more dangerous, but none of that mattered if it couldn't remove something that had already locked itself onto its body. Sometimes even swallowing the centipede isn't enough to win. On the island of Golem, a researcher overturned a rock and found a dead, juvenile, nose-horned viper underneath. The head of a centipede was sticking out through a tear in the snake's belly. The viper had actually managed to swallow it whole. The snake was slightly longer than its prey, but the centipede was heavier. And after the researchers performed a necropsy, the story became even stranger. Almost none of the snake's internal organs were left. The researchers believe the centipede had entered the stomach alive and continued fighting from the inside. It may have dug its legs into the surrounding tissue and badly damaged the viper's organs while trying to escape. At some point, the centipede reached the abdominal wall and broke through it, but it didn't manage to get all the way out. Under the rock, the researchers found 2 dead predators, one inside the other. Sometimes prey manages to break out while the predator is still alive. In 2011, photographer Sam Davis was taking pictures of wildlife along the Delaware coast when he spotted a heron in flight. A huge eel, which the bird had apparently swallowed shortly before, was hanging from its body. The heron kept flying and even landed on the water as though everything were perfectly under control. The eel was still showing signs of life. In the photos, its body can be seen twisting. At first, the photographer thought the eel had simply latched onto the heron's neck. It wasn't until he got home and zoomed in on the photos that he realized he was looking at the wrong end. The eel's head was sticking straight out of the bird's body. In other words, the heron had swallowed its prey whole, but once inside, the eel somehow pierced the bird's body and pushed its head out. No one knows how the story ended. When the photographer left, the heron was still flying with the eel hanging from its body. Experts believe the bird might have survived if the wound healed and no infection developed. The fate of the eel also remains unknown. In Thailand, however, researchers witnessed the exact opposite. A centipede was eating a snake. It happened in the Sakarit Biosphere Reserve. In the leaf litter, scientists discovered a Scolopendra dawidafi wrapped around a small Sabinifus triangularis snake and pinning it down with its many legs. The centipede clung tightly to the snake's body and sank its forcipules into it, the modified front pair of limbs it uses to inject venom. And the timing couldn't have been worse for the snake. It was caught right in the middle of laying eggs. 3 were already lying nearby, while another 2 apparently remained inside its body. In that position, the snake had very little chance of breaking free. The researchers chose not to intervene and watched as the centipede continued to restrain and eat its prey. And this was far from the only case in which a centipede had ended up on the unexpected side of the food chain. Some centipedes have even gone after animals that can fly. In Venezuela, researchers observed giant centipedes hunting bats inside caves. These are the largest centipedes in the world, with some individuals growing to more than 12 inches long. But even at that size, a bat may outweigh the predator, so the centipede uses a highly unusual hunting position. It climbs the cave walls to the ceiling and anchors itself there with the rear part of its body. The front half remains free, allowing it to grab a bat that comes within reach and hold it tightly with its many legs. In one case, researchers found a centipede about 6.5 feet above the ground. It was clinging to the ceiling with only its 5 rear pairs of legs. With the rest, it had already wrapped itself around an adult bat and was calmly eating it. The centipede began with the neck and chest. By the time the researchers collected the animals, it had eaten roughly a third of its prey. Marks on the bat's body showed that it had tried to escape, but had been unable to break free. And this wasn't an isolated incident. In the same Venezuelan cave, centipedes were found preying on several species of bats, and the same hunting posture was repeatedly observed on the ceiling. Researchers believe that centipedes may do more than simply crawl toward roosting bats. They may wait on the cave ceiling until one comes close enough to grab. They might even be capable of snatching bats as they fly past. And now we leave the cave behind and travel to tiny Phillip Island just off Norfolk Island. Here, centipedes have moved on to hunting seabirds. The local species, Cormocephalus coignae, grows to more than 8 inches long and emerges at night to hunt. All around it, thousands of black-winged petrel chicks sit in burrows dug into the ground. For a centipede, it's practically an all-you-can-eat buffet. It crawls into a burrow, grabs a chick with its forcipules, and injects the venom. Then it begins eating the bird while it's still alive, usually starting at the neck. Researchers witnessed one of these attacks firsthand and later began finding the same distinctive injuries on dead chicks. Then the scientists calculated the scale of the predation. They estimated that centipedes on this tiny island may kill between 2,000 and nearly 4,000 petrel chicks every year. And they don't stop at birds. The same centipedes also eat geckos, skinks, and other small animals. According to the researchers' estimates, vertebrates make up almost half of their entire diet. And by the way, Phillip Island has no native predatory mammals to fill that ecological role. Instead, it has a giant centipede. To understand how a centipede can overpower snakes, bats, and birds, we need to look at what it uses to bite them. Right behind its head is a pair of powerful curved hooks. They look like enormous fangs and work in roughly the same way. The centipede drives them into its prey and injects venom through them, but they were never actually fangs. As I mentioned earlier, these are forcipules, the centipede's first pair of limbs, which evolved from ordinary walking legs into venom delivery weapons. Scientists consider this a unique evolutionary development. In no other known animal have walking legs evolved into specialized organs for injecting venom. And it was a major transformation. The leg changed shape, became shorter and more powerful, a venom channel developed inside it, and the entire limb shifted toward the head, effectively losing its original role in walking. Forcipules look slightly different in different groups of centipedes. In the more ancient lineages, they still look more like legs, while in others they have evolved into short, powerful hooks with a much more limited range of motion, adapted specifically for gripping and holding prey. So technically, a centipede doesn't even bite its victim the way a snake does. It grabs it with its legs. Or kicks it? What else are you supposed to do with legs? No, it grabs it and then pumps in the venom. Speaking of snakes, their prey doesn't necessarily have to struggle its way back out. Sometimes simply swallowing too much is enough. One of the best-known cases happened in Florida. A dead Burmese python, roughly 13 feet long, was found in Everglades National Park. Its belly had split open, and an almost intact 6.5-foot alligator was sticking out through the enormous tear. The python had indeed managed to swallow it. It just couldn't digest it. Researchers never reached a definite conclusion about what exactly caused the snake to rupture. The prey may simply have been too large. But there's another possibility. After the python had eaten, a second alligator may have attacked it, tearing its body open during the fight. In Thailand, the situation was much clearer. A farmer was searching for a missing cow when instead he found a huge python with its stomach torn open. Inside was the cow itself. According to locals, the python had constricted the cow and swallowed it whole. Afterward, the snake's body became so badly swollen that its belly simply gave way. The python, of course, died. And yes, snakes can stretch their jaws and bodies far more than most predators, but even their abilities have limits. Modern centipedes grow to around 8 to 12 inches and can take down vertebrates, yet in the distant past, the land was home to a creature so vast it would make today's centipedes look tiny. Its name was Arthropleura. It wasn't a centipede, and as far as we can tell, it wasn't the same kind of predator either, but in terms of size, it looked like a true monster millipede. The largest individuals grew to more than 6.5 feet long. Essentially, it was an enormous armored arthropod train, almost as long as a person is tall. For a long time, scientists knew Arthropleura mainly from its tracks and fragments of its exoskeleton. Even those remains made it clear that something truly gigantic had once roamed the Carboniferous forests. Later, researchers discovered a head, which helped them understand more precisely what kind of creature it actually was. And this is where it's important not to get confused. This wasn't some ancient super centipede that hunted everything in sight. It was more likely a giant relative of modern millipedes that, according to current theories, fed on decaying plant matter and similar organic material. A harmless old grandpa. Snakes come with surprises too. Some of them have even learned to use the toxins of their own prey. In Japan, tiger keelback snakes hunt poisonous toads. The toads defend themselves with chemicals that are dangerous to many predators, but that doesn't stop these snakes. The snake eats the toad, but its toxins aren't simply digested along with the rest of the meal. Instead, the snake stores some of them for later in special glands beneath the skin at the back of its neck. When a predator attacks, the snake arches its neck and deliberately exposes that part of its body. Essentially, it gives the snake a chemical defense it doesn't even produce itself. The most convincing evidence came from the Japanese islands. In places where poisonous toads were abundant, researchers found high concentrations of their toxins in the snake's glands. But on an island where there were no such toads at all, the snakes had almost none of this protection and were more likely to flee when threatened. Researchers then repeated the experiment with young snakes. The juveniles that were fed toads quickly began accumulating their toxins, while those that were given this prey remained defenseless. And it doesn't end there. A female that stored enough toxins can pass some of this chemical protection onto her offspring before they even begin hunting toads themselves. But over time, some keelbacks ran into a problem. Their ancestors had obtained their defensive toxins from toads, but these snakes had switched to a completely different diet, feeding mainly on earthworms. You might expect the source of their poison to disappear along with the toads. Instead, the snakes found a substitute. Researchers analyzed the fluid in their neck glands and found the same class of compounds, euphedionolides, but their chemical profile no longer resembled toad toxins. It closely matched the toxins produced by fireflies. So the scientists took a closer look at what these snakes were eating. Sure enough, they found firefly larvae in their stomachs. In experiments, the snakes also readily chose the larvae as prey. The larvae use toxins to defend themselves as well, but the keelback snakes do exactly what other members of their genus do with toads. They eat the source of the poison, absorb its chemical compounds, and transfer them to the glands in their necks. The venom centipedes used to kill their prey has also attracted attention from an unexpected group of researchers, pharmacologists to be precise. That's because centipede venom isn't a single poisonous substance, but a complex mixture of many different molecules. Some affect the muscles, others target the nervous system, and some act with such precision that scientists are trying to turn them from poisons into the basis for new medicines. The venom of the Chinese red-headed centipede has proved especially interesting. Researchers discovered a small molecule in it that blocks a particular channel in nerve cells. And this channel plays an important role in transmitting pain signals. The substance was then tested on rodents. In one experiment, it relieved pain more effectively than morphine, while in others, its effects were roughly comparable. The researchers also saw none of the significant side effects they were specifically monitoring for in the animals. For now, this molecule isn't a medicine you can buy at a pharmacy. It's simply a promising candidate that scientists hope to use as the basis for new painkillers. And researchers are continuing to break down centipede venom, searching for compounds that could help treat pain, infections, and certain disorders of the nervous system. When it comes to snakes, even the most dangerous and venomous ones have one period when defending themselves becomes especially difficult: shedding. Before a snake sheds its old skin, its eyes begin to cloud over. A snake's eye is also covered by a transparent scale, and shortly before shedding, fluid builds up between the old layer and the new one. This makes everything appear blurry and significantly reduces the snake's vision. During this period, snakes often become less active and try to wait out the shedding process in a hiding place. For an animal that relies heavily on precise head positioning and an accurate strike when attacking, this is a serious disadvantage. And it's easy to notice from the outside. The eyes turn milky blue, the skin loses its shine, and the snake may remain almost completely still for several days, until the old layer finally begins to peel away. That may be precisely the kind of opportunity a centipede can take advantage of. It doesn't need to chase the snake across open ground. It only has to encounter it inside a shelter at a time when the snake can't see as well and is moving less. There's currently no direct evidence that centipedes deliberately seek out snakes that are about to shed, but if an attack happens during this period, the snake temporarily has fewer chances to spot the threat in time and position its head properly to face it. And once the struggle begins, the snake faces another problem. In the confusion, it may bite itself. When defending itself, a snake makes rapid strikes with its head toward whatever's nearby. Under extreme stress or pain, however, that reaction can sometimes misfire. There are documented cases of frightened or disoriented snakes grabbing their own bodies. Some have gone even further. Snakes in captivity have repeatedly been filmed biting their own tails and then beginning to swallow them. Exactly why this happens is still unclear. Possible explanations include stress, overheating, illness, extreme hunger, or simply a mistake in which the moving tail is mistaken for prey. In one such case, a snake was lying in a bowl of water and continued swallowing its already bloodied tail. In another, a king snake managed to swallow roughly half its own body before a person intervened. For a venomous snake, biting itself usually doesn't mean instant death. Many species are resistant to their own venom, but the fangs still puncture tissue, leave wounds, and can lead to infection. Now imagine a fight with a centipede. The snake's thrashing around, its opponent's holding on with several legs at once, and the pain triggers more frantic strikes. In that situation, it would be very easy to miss. And this is where things get especially interesting. The same Sakarat Biosphere Reserve in Thailand, where a centipede was observed catching and killing a small snake, is also home to the king cobra. UNESCO even lists it as one of the reserve's iconic animals. Against an adult king cobra, however, the same tactic probably wouldn't work. Scolopendra dawidafi can grow to around 6.3 inches or more. A king cobra, meanwhile, is a snake that measures several feet in length. The largest individuals can exceed 16 feet. In other words, living alongside that very same centipede is a snake that it simply couldn't wrap itself around the way it did with these smaller species. The difference in size isn't twofold or even fivefold. The king cobra also specializes in hunting other snakes and is capable of taking down fairly large prey. But researchers haven't yet documented any cases of a king cobra attacking Scolopendra dawidafi or of the centipede attempting to kill an adult king cobra. So for now, the limits of what this centipede can do seem fairly clear. It really can catch, restrain, and kill a small snake, but we simply don't know what would happen if it encountered a king cobra. Most likely nothing good. Another snake ran into trouble, again in Sakarat Biosphere Reserve. In 2018, researchers spotted an adult Sabinophus triangularis measuring roughly 22 to 26 inches long. At first, all they saw was the snake, and a few seconds later, they realized why it was barely moving. A large forest scorpion, Heterometris laeoticus, about 4 to 5 inches long, was hanging from the middle of its body. It gripped the snake with both pinchers, periodically adjusting its hold to keep the animal from escaping. The snake was still alive and reacting to what was happening, but it could no longer break free. Meanwhile, the scorpion had already started feeding. Without releasing the snake, it tore small pieces of flesh from its side. The researchers left for about an hour, and when they returned, both animals were still in almost exactly the same place. The scorpion still clutching its prey. A few minutes later, it began dragging the snake toward its burrow. It pulled the head and most of the body inside first, then disappeared almost completely underground with it. Remarkably, this was the same snake species that had been found in the jaws of a centipede in the same reserve several years earlier. The author specifically noted that this was only the second known case of this rare snake falling prey to a large invertebrate predator. And even hiding underground doesn't always offer protection. In India's Western Ghats, a researcher noticed the tail of a small shield-tail snake sticking out of loose, damp soil. Nearby was a Rhysida centipede about 4 inches long. The front half of its body was already inside the burrow. It continued forcing its way deeper while the snake began writhing and gradually emerged from beneath the soil. After about 27 minutes, the centipede wrapped its legs around the front of the snake's body and began literally pulling it out of the burrow. The snake itself was about 3/4 of an inch longer than its attacker. Once nearly the entire snake was above ground, the centipede suddenly released it, turned around, and crawled back into the burrow. This time it reached the snake's head, seized it with its forcipules, the venomous front limbs centipedes use like fangs, and pulled it all the way out. The snake continued struggling for a while, but soon went still. About 5 minutes later, the centipede dragged its prey into the undergrowth. The entire encounter from beginning to end lasted roughly 36 minutes. But centipedes and scorpions are far from the only invertebrates capable of killing snakes. Researchers compiled more than 300 documented cases of spiders attacking snakes around the world. These incidents were recorded on every continent, except Antarctica naturally, and most of them took place in the wild. Surprisingly, the snakes were usually not killed by enormous tarantulas. The most successful hunters turned out to be small widow spiders and their relatives. Their main advantage is the web. It can hang almost all the way down to the ground, allowing a small snake to simply crawl into it as it moves along. The more violently the snake thrashes and tries to escape, the more strands become wrapped around its body. The spider then approaches the trapped prey, bites it, injects venom, and adds even more silk, gradually immobilizing the snake. And the spider's size is a surprisingly poor indicator of which animal will win. In one case, a triangulate cobweb spider, Statoda triangulosa, caught a young garter snake that weighed roughly 355 times more than the spider itself. Death may not occur immediately after the bite. Sometimes the venom takes several hours to work, and in certain cases, the process lasts even longer. Throughout that time, the web continues to restrain the snake, preventing it from properly using its main weapons, its head and its bite. Some of the victims were venomous snakes as well. Researchers documented cases involving coral snakes, rattlesnakes, and Australian brown snakes. But against a tiny spider sitting among sticky strands, the snake's own venom is often almost useless. Before it can use its fangs, it first has to reach its opponent. And it's just lying there, covered in sticky silk, unable to move. After that, the spider treats the snake much like it would a large insect. It injects digestive fluids and gradually sucks out the liquefied tissue. A meal that large can last the spider for several days. See you later.